Hi guys, it's Gianna from Gianna's Kitchen, and today we're going to be making Patisserie filled with creme patisserie. Creme patisserie is used to fill patisserie, and it's a creamy filling, and patisserie can be made into two different things, like cream puffs or eclairs. Patisserie is a really delicious dessert that's French, and it's fluffy and airy. So let's get started on making it. First step, wash your hands. So to continue with our recipe, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to combine 1.5 cups of water, a teaspoon of sugar, a teaspoon of salt, and a stick of butter on high heat just before the water boils in a large saucepan. So we're going to turn the saucepan onto high heat. And then while that's heating up a little bit, we're going to cut up our butter into smaller pieces, like probably about a tablespoon to slice each, so it melts down faster and we don't have to wait for the chunkiness to go away as long. Alright, so now that we're done cutting the butter, we're going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's going to cook for the first 15 or so minutes at that, and then we're going to change it and lower the temperature a little bit. But now that our pot is nice and hot, we're going to pour the 1.5 cups of water into the pot. And then we're going to add the butter that we chopped up. The butter chunks, I think, should be about this size. That's a really good size. And we're going to put the butter in with it. And then we're going to get our teaspoon of salt and a teaspoon of sugar into the butter and water. And once that's in, we're going to mix the butter, water, salt, and sugar together so the butter just starts melting. Then we're going to put the lid onto the pot so it boils a little bit faster. And I'm going to take a wooden spoon and just mix the butter around a little bit to get it started on melting. And then we're going to put the lid on so it can boil faster. So my water is just starting to boil, and what you do when you get to that is you want to turn the heat down so it doesn't stay boiling to about medium low. And then we have 1 1/3 cups of all-purpose flour that we're going to add in to the water and butter mixture. And it should be just simmering, the mixture. And we're going to mix that up for a few minutes until a nice dough forms. It should be a little chunky, but it should hold, it might be a little watery too, but it should hold together pretty well. Alright, so as you might be able to see, there's a little bit of flour still visible here. So we're going to keep mixing that up a little bit more. But this is about the right consistency. You just want to make sure everything is nice and mixed together. Alright, so now it's gotten to the right consistency. Everything's mixed in. So what we're going to do is we are going to transfer it to the bowl of a standard mixer fitted with a paddle attachment. And we're going to mix it at about medium speed until no more steam is coming off of the dough. Alright, so now that we've got it all transferred in, you should be able to see a little bit of steam coming out of the bowl. And we're going to close it, fit it with the paddle attachment, and turn it up to about medium heat until steam stops coming out. As you might be able to see, there's a little steam still coming out of the bowl, so we're going to mix it up until that steam stops coming. Alright, so no more steam's coming out of the bowl right now, so we're going to reduce it to about low speed. And then we have 4 eggs cracked here. You're going to try and add them one at a time into the dough. And the dough will break apart a little bit once the egg goes in. But don't worry because it will come back together to the consistency it started with. And we're just gonna go one egg at a time. So it's like a little chunky and a little separated here right now, but it will come back together. See, like a few chunks is just starting to come back together. About the same. And once you don't really see that much more egg, that should be like after a minute or two, then it's about time to add another one. And like, see where it's at right now, you might want to stop it, get a spatula, and try and get some of that out of the mixer. Paddle a little bit. And then once that's done, you can turn it back on. And I think it's ready for the next egg. And see, it's just a little broken, but it's gonna come back together after each egg. And then after you put the fourth egg in, you're gonna see how well it holds together, and you might need another egg or two, but a lot of times it works for me just with the 4 eggs. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so I just added the fourth egg a few minutes ago, and it's coming together really nice. Like this little bit stringy, smooth consistency is perfect. I don't think we'll need any extra eggs. If yours looks like this, then I think you won't need any extra eggs either, but if it looks like a little more clumpy, then I'd add one just to make sure it's nice and smooth. So the next thing we gotta do is pipe these. And as I mentioned before, they can be made in cream puffs or eclairs. Cream puffs are little circles like spears, and eclairs are little strips. And I'm using a Ziploc bag for my piping bag. After I'm going to fill it, I'm going to cut a little circle on top, so it should make a pretty good piping space. And I have 2 baking sheets lined with silicone mats. Mine have little circles on them, so I know like how far to space them out, but you don't really need them. Silicone mats would work fine, anyone would work. I'm going to start filling my Ziploc bag. You want to make sure the ends are folded back so it doesn't get super doughy around the top. And you can use your spatula to spoon in the dough. And once you get all of it in, just try and keep it away from the tip you're going to put the circle in so it doesn't come out when you cut the circle. So now that I have it filled into my Ziploc bag, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to close up the bag. And you see, I'm going to cut this corner, so I kept clear of this corner so you don't start piping accidentally when you cut it. So what you want to do is you want to gather it all in at the top of the Ziploc bag, like the blue part that you zip it. I'm going to gather it all and twist it. And right here, before you tuck this in, we're going to cut off, I'd say, about a little triangle pretty evenly off. So you have like a nice hole that the patisserie should get through pretty nicely. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to finish off closing it by pulling this end that we didn't cut up with over here, so you've got a nice triangle of the bag. And I'm going to pipe on these silicone mats. Mine have little circles on them. Again, yours don't need to. Just, I think any silicone mat would really work. So to squeeze it, you're going to squeeze a little from the top, and you're going to more direct where it's going. I'm going to start with some cream puffs, which are the plain circles. And they should be, I think, about that size. Try and make the top as flat as you can. It helps to get the top flat if you just twist it around the end in a little spiral. And then for the eclairs, choose the spot to start and go in a line, I think about 2 or 3 inches long, nice sized eclair. I'm going to pipe a few of both of them. Alright, so I just put our first tray into the oven. That's in at 400 degrees for 15 minutes. And then we're going to check on them after the 15 minutes is up And without turning off the oven, we're going to change it to 350 and put that in for another 10 minutes. Then we'll check them. And we're doing one sheet at a time, so 15 minutes, we'll come back and check them. Alright, so one of the trickier things with making creme pat is separating the eggs. And if you have long sleeves up, you might want to roll them up so the egg whites don't get too far up your hands. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to have a separate bowl for yolks and whites. So you're going to crack the egg on the whites bowl, so in case any whites spill out while you crack it, they don't fall into the yolks bowl. So you're going to take off what looks like to you the shorter side, so it still has like a nice cup there over the white bowl. I have a trash can right by my legs over here, so I'm going to throw that away. And then I'm going to carefully pour the yolk into my hands and open my fingers a little bit so all the whites can drain out. Throw the other eggshell away. And you're going to alternate hands and see if there's no more whites dripping from my hands. So I'm going to give the yolk to the other bowl, like that. And then you're going to continue the process with the other few eggs. Okay, so we're only going to use the yolks for our creme pat filling. You can use the whites, you can save the whites and use them for many other things, like you can go back to one of my videos and make meringues. Meringues are a nice and easy French dessert. But we're going to keep continuing on with the creme pat, and we're going to take 1 3/4 cups of whole milk and pour it into a small saucepan. And we're going to turn the saucepan on to about like medium-high heat. And we're going to let that go to a near boil. We're going to skip the lid on this because it can boil a little more slower because there's a little bit more preparation you have to do for the creme pat, like mix in some of the other ingredients. Alright, so our milk is getting to a boil, heating up. So what we're going to do now is we're going to mix up the egg yolks and the sugar with a whisk. So you need 5 tablespoons of the sugar. I'm going to start by measuring that out. And we're going to whisk them together once we pour the eggs in. And soon after that, the milk should be just about ready to add to this. And there's not that much more we have to add after the milk. And that should be done soon. And we're going to mix them up with the whisk until the egg yolks are pretty well incorporated. Alright, so I'm mixing the sugar and the eggs, and we just turned the heat turned down the heat on the Patisserie because the timer for the 15 minutes went off. It's now baking at 350 for 10 minutes, and then after that we'll check them. But we are kind of getting these egg yolks and sugar pretty incorporated to each other. And it's a nice color and a nice consistency too. It's kind of like pasty right now. Like nice and mixed in. You can't see any plain sugar. There's no more egg chunks left there from the yolk. Alright, I think that's pretty good. Alright, so the milk is still heating up, and we've got to add a few more ingredients to this egg mixture here. We're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of flour and 1.5 tablespoons of cornstarch. And if you have a set of measuring spoons that have half tablespoons, that's much easier to measure out than trying to figure out what 1.5 teaspoons is and do that 3 times. So I'm going to start by measuring out the flour. Into 1.5 tablespoons would be 3 of these half tablespoons. And then the cornstarch you have to be a little careful with because it's very light and it can blow everywhere if you move it too fast. So you want to try and get it nice and slowly over the bowl here. And now that we have that in there, we're going to start mixing it up a little bit with our whisk. Mix it until that's nice and incorporated. And it should be like no white left, mostly the egg color. We're kind of getting there right now. See how there's still a little like white on the sides here. You want to make sure you don't see any white at all. And that's how you know it's well mixed. Okay, so our milk is getting to an almost boiling point. I turned the heat off, and we're going to bring the milk, or bring the other ingredients over to here, and you're going to gradually pour the milk in a little bit at a time to be sure the egg yolks don't get cooked, but you want to keep whisking it until it's like cooled off a little bit so you're sure no egg yolks cook. Okay, so I transferred my milk into a heat-safe liquid measuring cup because for me that's easier to pour in while I'm mixing. You just want to keep mixing to avoid scrambling. A little bit of the milk at a time until it's nice and incorporated. You don't want to splatter too much of the milk, but you want to try and move it fast. I'm going to add a little bit more now that there's no big chunks of egg and stuff floating around. Alright, so we just transferred our milk mixture into the saucepan again, but when you transfer it, if you see any mildly scrambled eggs, you can strain it into the pot, but ours looks pretty nice and smooth, so we just went ahead and poured it into the pot. So we're going to turn it on to medium-low heat, the pot, and you're going to keep on continuing to mix it until it thickens a little bit. Then once it thickens, we're going to take it off the heat and add one more thing to it. Alright, so I just took these cream puffs out of the oven, and I have an assistant here helping me for this part so that I can check these while we're still mixing the creme pat. So I'm going to take a relatively medium-sized one. They look pretty good with color too. So I think this is like a pretty medium one. And I'm going to cut it open down the top. And I'm going to see nice and how airy it is. So if I break this one open, see it's still a little bit doughy here. So they might need like a few more minutes, like maybe 5 more minutes, and then we can check on them again. But see, like they should be like pretty airy, like it should be hollow inside. So these aren't quite there yet. So I'm going to put them back in for maybe another 3 or 5 minutes and see how they look then. Okay, so our creme pat is getting nice and thick here. So I'm going to turn our heat off, and as you can see, like the whisk is leaving lines in it. So I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to move it to another burner just to make sure it's done heating up and it doesn't heat up anymore because of the burner might still be hot. And I'm going to add my half a teaspoon of vanilla extract in there to give it a little more flavor. You can about stop mixing it now, but don't leave it alone for too long while you're still adding the vanilla in. All right, half a teaspoon of vanilla, and then you're going to use that whisk to mix that in. The vanilla mixes in pretty fast. As you can see, there's already no trace of it. So what you can do now is you can move it into a separate bowl and cover it in plastic wrap until our cream puffs are ready. And our cream puffs only have a few minutes left, so we're almost good. All right, so our timer just went off to check on our patisserie puffs again, and I found another pretty medium-sized one. I'm gonna cut into that. Oh, you see how it just squished right there? That's a pretty good sign. That means like it's nice and airy inside. And yeah, definitely. Look at that. So this guy, see here, it's like mostly hollow. A few little strings of dough, that's totally fine. But it's like, that lets us know that these are really well baked. And these guys are done. So we're gonna put our second sheet in right now while we're waiting for our creme pat to rest up a little bit, and we'll start filling these in a few minutes. All right, so the next step we have to do with these that just came out of the oven is we're going to like put a hole in them with a piping tip. I'm gonna use a piping tip that I'm going to pipe them with so I know it fits. This is like a normal circle piping tip. It has number 804 on the side. And what I think we should do for the cream puffs is some of them have like, this is a better example here. Some of them have like an open space where like some of the air is trying to come out. What you want to try and do is you want to create the hole in there because it won't wreck the cream puff and it won't look that bad either. So I just poked the hole right in the middle of there, and I'm going to do that for the rest of the cream puffs. But I have a few eclairs here, and I'm going to try and put a hole in the bottom and see how that works. So yeah, for the eclairs, the bottom works pretty well. I think because these are kind of small, I think one hole should do. But if they were a little bit longer, like maybe this long, I would put 2 holes in. But I think these are just okay for 1 hole in the bottom. So yeah, cream puffs on the crack, eclair on the bottom. Alright, so we put our creme pat in another Ziploc bag, piping bag. And we have the tip that we use to punch the holes in for the piping tip so we know it fits. And you're going to take one of your cream puffs and you're going to put the hole over the piping tip and squeeze. And you should squeeze it until it starts to come back out of that hole. Like you can see there's some coming out of the hole now. That should mean it's just about full and it doesn't need any more in it. I'm going to set the ones that are full on this wood board. You can set them on a plate or whatever you want to serve them on. Or you can just eat 1 or 2 of them as you go. And then when you get to the eclairs, you want to go to the bottom, just turn them over and do just the same thing. But you might need to squeeze them a little longer because they're bigger. And you can have them face up. You can have the bottom facing up if you want, or you can put the bottom face down so the cream isn't showing. You could do either one with the eclairs. So we finished filling our cream puffs, and I think these are some of the most filled ones here. I'm going to try one and see how it tastes. Look at how filled that one is. It's so creamy. The creme pat's so creamy. The outside of the cream puff is so crunchy. It's a great mix of textures and it's a great flavor. See you next time.